South Lamb Park Neighborhood Association, in conjunction with the League of Women Voters, Sacramento City Council District 5 Election Forum. We're delighted to have you. My name is Phoebe Austin. I'm one of your neighbors and one of the 15 board members on SLIPNet. We are here at this venue, the Sacramento New Technology High School, because we would like for our neighbors to be more familiar with the school as it is in all of our backyards. And we're grateful to the administration and also to our videographer who is filming this event. So thank you very much. I would like to introduce, and then she will take over at the end of my brief reading, Nancy Compton. She is our moderator from the League, and she's one of the co-presidents of the League here in Sacramento County. Also, just really quickly, I forgot to say that we should acknowledge that students here from Sacramento New Technology High School recently won an award for the Forestry Challenge Championship. So congratulations to them. Also, I would like to make sure that we recognize that our beverages are provided regularly at SLIPNet events by this owner of 7-Eleven, and he is called Saloon 2. So thank you to him, and if you see him, make sure you thank him for the beverages. I want to introduce the president of our SLIPNet board, Brian Ebert.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you most of all to the candidates. We really appreciate you coming out tonight. We've gone through several of these, and it's great that you're here. We appreciate it.
It's our intention to provide opportunities for our neighbors to be engaged in community events. Thank you so much, Joseph Berry, Tamika Recluse, and Jay Chenier. We appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to our moderator, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to this candidate forum for Sacramento City Council District 5. I'm Nancy Compton from the League of Women Voters, and the League is an organization. It's a non-partisan organization working to encourage the active and informed participation of citizens in government. We do not support candidates, we don't oppose candidates or political parties, but what we do is study public policy, and we provide voter service and voter education to the community, and that's what we're doing this evening. We're very excited that we've been invited to be here this evening, and I will start, let me explain what we're doing. Before we got started, the candidates each drew a card, and by drawing a card, that then gave them the order in which they will sit and in which they will introduce themselves and respond to the very first question. After that, the questions will be asked randomly to make sure that everyone has an opportunity, an equal opportunity to respond. Thank you for your questions. I will tell you that typically we get way more questions than we can cover in the allotted time, but we will certainly do the best we can. The candidates will each be given a minute to provide an opening, and we have a timer. And our timer will, their opening is 2 minutes. So the timer will indicate 30 seconds and 15 seconds, and you all know we've done this before. And the answers will be 1 minute, and then the candidate closing will also be 2 minutes. So let's get started. Thank you again for being here and for participating in our democracy. I'd like to introduce our candidates this evening. These are the 3 candidates for Sacramento City Council District 5. On my immediate right, we have Tamika Recluse. Next to her is Jay Chenier, and next to Jay is Joseph Berry, yes. And they're the candidates for District 5. So we will get started, and we will have Tamika provide an opening statement.
Thank you, Nancy, and League of Women Voters. Thank you, Southern Park Neighborhood Association, all my bags and things. When you're a woman candidate, you carry lots of things. Thank you so much, Lisna, for having us. It's an honor to be presenting here to your neighborhood association, and an honor to be in this space. I was actually checking on the education data of new technology. This school has a lot of greens and blues, so good job. So yes, my name is Tamika LaCluse. I am a lifelong resident of Sacramento. The reason why I'm running is because I want to be a voice for all communities in District 5. I live in Oak Park. I was the president of the Oak Park Neighborhood Association for 2 terms, and then vice president for a 3rd. I also adopted our park because I wanted to bring more resources, and I was, quite frankly, tired of picking up needles before having my kids go play. So I took upon myself, I organized our community, and we started a parks committee with the neighborhood association. That's how I got started, and ended up leading the change of our neighborhood association, the face of our neighborhood association, to be more inclusive and to be more intentional. I have been a preschool teacher, Montessori preschool teacher, and I also teach positive discipline to parents as well as teaching staff. That's teachers, teachers' assistants, and administrations. I am hoping that not only can I use my teaching experience and my positive discipline and my neighborhood association experience to bring about more advocacy and involvement in the process of city government, but also to be able to bring more communities together so that we can truly have a voice of community for community by community at City Hall, and make sure that we're fighting for our neighborhoods, our kids, and our families.
Thank you, and now we will hear a statement from Jay Chenier.
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Jay Chenier. I've been your council person here for about 7.5 years. I'm honored to be here. It's a little bit like Old Home Week for me. This was one of the schools that we started, one of the small schools that we started when I was on the school board a number of years ago. So Brian just pointed out that we actually have a plaque. I think it's the only one that I actually have my name on, but I'm excited about that. But it's a great school, and it's part of a network of schools that does really well as far as technology and group learning for our young people. I'm also excited to be here, and I want to thank the League and Slipknot. It's easier for me, and it's better for me as your council person to work with neighborhood associations that are engaged in their communities and have taken ownership of their communities and have a vision about what they want. And I think that Slipknot is really a prime example of a great neighborhood association. We haven't agreed on everything along the way. Most things we've agreed on, but it's been exciting for me to be able to work with you on the Del Rio Trail, on some of the other issues that you've had, the shopping center at 35th and Southland Park, also the shopping center in Southland Park and Florin. Those are tangible wins that we've had and that we've been able to have together, and the leadership that you all have provided in all of those areas really has been fabulous. I'm running again for council because I think that we're in a very exciting time for the city. We have lots going on, huge opportunities, both through the economy and the economic revival that's happened downtown, through the work we're doing on homelessness, which I'm very proud of, and I hope we get some questions on that, through the work that we're doing around young people and the supports and opportunities that we're providing. We have nearly 1,000 summer jobs this year for our high school kids, so keeping them in a positive environment, keeping them in a safe place is something I'm really proud of. So with that, again, I am anxious to answer your questions.
Thank you, and now we will hear an opening statement from Joseph Barry.
Yeah, my name is Joseph Berry. I understand that I'm the underdog in this race. I haven't been funded as well as the other candidates. However, I think that I am probably the most qualified person for the job, other than respectfully Jay's career with the service that he's done. Currently, I'm a doctoral student in pursuing education policy and leadership at California State University, Sacramento. I hold several degrees. I've also been involved in advocacy for many years, about 10 years currently, my main goal in advocacy is to restore the state cuts to Social Security that was made during the recession era. Those cuts haven't been restored. Honestly, the main thing that I'm, more than anything proud is to push the ideas, right? Politics and our leaders are really here in almost an academic realm to try to figure out ways to solve problems, right? And I feel like that the more that we can have a push towards that, right? We want to make that marketplace of ideas and that marketplace of policies something that's competitive. And I feel that I bring a lot of that to this campaign. I'm very tied to this school. I actually graduated here when this school was Thurgood Marshall. I was homeless at the time when I graduated from Thurgood Marshall after school. So I've been through a lot in my life. I've overcame a lot of adversity. I understand, how diversity is needed in our society in order to make a sustainable economy. And I would really, really appreciate your consideration for your vote. Thank you for coming out. It's very important to have this public participation.
Okay, and thank you very much. Before we continue with the questions, I have been asked by the question sorters if any of you need cards. That's how we get the questions, is by index cards, and I believe should be floating throughout the audience. You need one? We need one. Okay.
Raise your hand and Ms. Phoebe will bring one to you.
Okay, and while we're doing that, we'll proceed to the first question. Again, I will ask the question and the responses will be in the same order as the opening statements. However, after that, it will be random. So the first question is, neighborhood advocates have complained that the city has focused too much of its attention and funding on the downtown area at the expense of the neighborhoods. Please comment.
I agree. I agree that there has been a lot of focus on downtown, a lot of intentional investment downtown, not so as much in our communities, but also it's been on community members' backs. I mean, we have this arena that we did not want to use public subsidies for. We voted against it. We were assured, actually, that we would not be paying for it, and then came out that we did. We have parking meters that not only did the rate go up for parking, but also it's now till 10 p.m. in many places. And again, that should be going to other services other than supporting the arena. So I think streetcar, again, a lot of energy downtown. We need bus lines in our communities. We need roads in our communities. We need bike lines and lanes in our communities. That's where we need to go.
Thank you. And Jay, the same questions.
So I think that it's always important, extremely important to have a vibrant downtown. We have a lot of folks who are moving back downtown. They're doing that for a reason. I think the arena has actually exceeded all of our expectations and will pay off in many times for the city as we move forward. Pay off with county property taxes that we've been able to collect, sales taxes, things like that. So I'm excited about that. Now, I do agree that we need to turn our attention to the economic development of our corridors and our neighborhoods. We've begun to do that over the last couple of years. We've done our Rails grant, which was $1 million in grants to smaller organizations working in our neighborhoods. We just put out also $500,000 for small community-based organizations, also to work with young people in our neighborhoods. And we've had a number of other grants that we've done as well. Our Creative Economy grants was $500,000 to small community organizations. So we are moving into that realm in the neighborhoods. We need to continue to do that.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
On this particular issue, I have to be very critical of the incumbent, Mr. Shamir. We have definitely made it a point to invest in development to a degree that is unethical. I understand that development is necessary. I understand we need a vibrant downtown. I understand that growth in Sacramento is something that is required for us to, thrive as a city. However, the focus on that has been magnified so much that now we're seeing a lot of the, I guess you would say, byproducts that are not healthy for our communities. I will give Jay credit for growing our economy and for growing these things around development, especially downtown. However, I don't trust the incumbent at this point to make policies that will invest in our communities to remove, not just remove, but to help the people that are the most in need, whether it be homeless or people who are having mental health issues, as well as the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. And I need to remind the candidates that we are not speaking against other candidates, but rather just to directly answer the question. Okay.
Yes, just a really quick rebuttal. I just want to be sure, I have a lot of, I came from Midtown. I lived in Midtown for many years. People aren't moving back to downtown. People are moving into downtown. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the next question, we'll start with Jay. How can neighborhood groups be more effective at City Hall? And please be specific.
So I think neighborhood groups actually are effective at City Hall, and it's about doing their own organizing. If you look at the neighborhood groups, and my practice has been to bring the neighborhood groups together, bring the leaders together every year. We've done this for 7 years with the neighborhood leaders meeting, where we ask the neighborhood groups to give me their 2 or 3 top priorities, things that we can then support them on during the year. And if you look down the line at the neighborhood groups, it's much easier when you have a strong neighborhood association than when you don't have one, obviously, in there. But if you look at Slipna, we have taken the Del Rio Trail and moved it from an idea, which was supported by the neighborhood group, to a $2.2 million planning grant, to moving the trail from RT to the city on ownership, and hopefully this year towards a $12 million grant to actually build the trail. So I think neighborhood groups can be very organized if they are meeting with their council people to make their views known.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
I think that the effectiveness of neighborhood groups at the council is ultimately based on the relationship that the council member has with those groups. Even the process for the Del Rio Trail, I would like to know, sincerely, because I know that there's a push to remove the tracks and keep the trail at where it's just the trail and no tracks, and then there's other people who want to keep the tracks for historical purposes. And I would like to know, how those types of discussions go. Mr. Chenier has the experience to have been in those situations already, but what we need to do is make sure that those conversations are taken in earnest, right? And we need to make sure that those conversations are made with actual implications rather than having other issues potentially affecting our decisions.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, same question.
So, how successful can neighborhood associations be at City Hall? They can block a liquor ordinance from being repealed for your neighborhood, especially if you have a neighborhood that already is facing lots of substance abuse. The neighborhood association can block that. A neighborhood association can also rally with other neighborhood associations to support a common cause or a common movement that affects them both. A neighborhood association can organize and fight for jobs and fight for developments. Neighborhood associations at City Hall can working with the council member, working with the council member's staff, make sure that their perspective is communicated. We have had a very strong neighborhood association with Jay. I've worked with him for as long as I've been with OPNA, and I know the power of the neighborhood association because I ran it.
Certainly.
So I just want to clear something up. So we're not taking the tracks out. There's no movement to do that. I don't want to get emails in the morning from people. But we're not putting a train back there on the Del Rio Trail.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, the next question, and we will start with Joseph. What concrete steps are you willing to commit to tonight to reduce excessive speeding, reckless driving, and other risky vehicle behavior that has led to injury and death on Freeport Boulevard between Fruit Ridge, Seamus, and Sutterville?
This particular situation really hits close to home because my children attend that school and they walk home from that school for the last 5 or 6 years. This here is a prime example of our leadership looking to issues that save money or make money or development issues downtown. And I know this is a recurring thing, but there was a crosswalk there that was removed, and I was, arguing in part because we didn't want to allocate funds to maintain the crosswalk there. That may or may not be the reason, but I don't see the reason for removing a crosswalk. Concrete things that I would do is immediately to make sure that there's speed enforcement taking place. I like the speed sign that they have, but the crosswalks need to be returned, and not just the crosswalks returned, but we need to make the civil engineering aspect of it safe for pedestrians. My children cross those streets as well, and I think that some way that you can, and this would be more of a civil engineer issue, slow those traffics down. It's very important. It's a critical issue for lives right now.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, the same question.
So I commit to making sure that I'm fighting for every resource that we have. Whether it's painting lines, whether it's speed bumps. We had conducted, my husband and I, who's in the audience, were part of a traffic calming study before we had the children. We had a little bit more time. And part of that was because we were having the same problems. People speeding, people, what are those, wheelies in the intersections. And so building partnerships, maintaining partnerships, and working with our partners from SABA to Walk Sacramento to the ADA advocates, and then again using every resource. If the resources aren't there, then I commit to finding them, because that's what we do. We need to make sure that our communities are safe. We need to make sure that we put pedestrians and bikes over vehicles, so we need to make sure that we are providing all of the opportunities for communicating and building those partnerships.
Thank you. I think those wheelies are called donuts.
Donuts.
I don't know why I know that.
We've seen Nancy do those donuts sometimes.
Okay, now answer the question.
So really quickly, on that, so speeding, running red lights, speed bumps, number 2 issue, 6 months that I've been out knocking on doors for people. So it's a problem that is really across the whole city. And part of the reason actually goes back to the recession, and when we took out about 100 police from our roles, part of that was our traffic division. It's something we need to build back, and it's on the agenda for building back. The research on crosswalks is if you have 15,000 cars or less going through an intersection, they work. If you have 15,000 cars or more, they provide a false sense of security. The intersection, unfortunately, where the woman and her grandson were hit, it's 30,000 cars a day. That's why that crosswalk was taken out. It's a research-based activity that our traffic division is doing. Since then, we've taken a number of actions. We put the radar signs in, that's helped. We have increased enforcement. I've asked for a traffic study that goes back to Meadowview. 160 was built as a highway, not a street. We need to figure out how to slow people down all the way from Meadowview on up. And we also are doing some creative signage that should go in within the next month.
All right, thank you. The next question, and we will start with you, Tamika. And that is, cannabis businesses are moving into several neighborhoods in Sacramento, causing commercial rent increases that are displacing some existing local businesses. Since the city code prohibits undue concentration of cannabis businesses, should the city take action to prevent business displacement, or do we let the marketplace decide?
We take action. I don't think we should let the market decide. It would be too late. We take action now. We put those protections in for our communities and our small businesses now. In the past 8 years, we've seen a huge decrease of small business, and it wasn't just the recession, it's policies that were put in place that didn't protect small business owners. So yes, we put those protections in now.
So let's talk specifically about your neighborhood, because you have a number of cannabis businesses going in a small area. And my understanding of what the neighborhood wants is something similar to what we've done around undue concentration in the Power Inn area. What we've done in Power Inn is they have about 25 million square feet of warehouse space, about 2.5 million square feet as a cap for undue concentration on cannabis warehouses, mostly cultivation and distribution. If you want the same thing, you have about 1.14 million square feet in that industrial area that we're talking about where the businesses are coming in. So far, we have about 6% of that going towards cannabis. So in Power Inn, it's about 10, 11%. If that's the cap you want, I'm more than happy to work with you to put that cap on. We need to look neighborhood by neighborhood, because all neighborhoods are different about what they want. And this is, again, working with the neighborhood, we can get to a solution, I think, where everybody will be happy.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jay said, because it's important to allow cannabis to have their place in the marketplace as well. There should be some type of separation between, as they refer to, like the warehouse type of operations where we have grows, and small businesses that are occupying more retail and space that has traffic. The way, I feel like that I would be the strongest candidate to identify how those businesses operate, how those businesses work, and how each one of those businesses will be able to flourish and either coincide, or we can, like Jay said, we can agree on certain types of caps that won't manipulate the marketplace, terribly much, and won't pervert the money to a point that we're not allowing income that could otherwise be generated, not just for our neighborhood, but for the city in general. So I think it's important that we strike that balance where it's a win-win, and I think that I'm the best candidate to be able to identify those things.
Thank you. And it appears that you have a question or a rebuttal.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure. That question was about cultivation, correct?
Oh, it was a long one. Let's see. It just says cannabis businesses are moving into several neighborhoods. It does not specify cultivation. However, I will say we have lots of questions about cannabis. So I'm going to try to combine a couple of them. This one says, and Jay, you are going to be our first responder, soon after the legalization of cannabis by the voters, the city of Sacramento approved a process for licensing of commercial cultivation and retail sales of marijuana. Many local governments in the state were more cautious, taking a wait-and-see approach. Do you think the city made the correct decision?
So I do, and I've been obviously in the middle of all of that. I just want to correct one thing on the retail part. That's something that was done years ago on dispensaries. We looked at manufacturing, cultivation, distribution, transportation, and testing as we've gone forward. The bottom line for me is it's legal. The people of California and the people of Sacramento voted overwhelmingly to make it legal. It's here one way or another. So it's either here legally or it's here illegally. What we've done through our permit fees is use those funds to add more police as we've gone to bust the illegal grows, both commercial and residential. Residential illegal grows are one of the biggest challenges that we've had over time. My feeling is we use those funds to do three things, and we use regulation to do three things. Increase public safety, so we know where the legals are and where the illegals are. We have fewer police calls around legal grows than anywhere in the neighborhoods they reside. Number two, public health. We want to be able to regulate it, make sure testing is done on everything. And number three, increase revenues for the city.
Thank you. And Joseph, same question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. Well, perhaps. Here it is. Okay. Soon after after the legalization of cannabis by the voters of the city of Sacramento, soon after the legalization of cannabis by the voters, the city of Sacramento approved a process for licensing of commercial cultivation and retail sales of marijuana. Many local governments in the state were more cautious, taking a wait-and-see approach. Do you think the city made the correct decision?
Well, I would argue that the city has taken, to a large extent, a wait-and-see approach. Even though they adopted these policies, these were policies that were voted in. So these were things that the city had to adopt. And, the candidates may talk about how, we're going to use these funds for rehabilitation things, trying to keep kids off drugs, certain ways to help the youth, right? But those funds are already allocated through the act itself, or through the measure itself. I studied it very much at Davis during my research there, following ballot measures. And so, what we have to do here, I feel that the city is failing at, is being a little bit more aggressive on how to make these policies work in order to, have income and revenue coming for the city, instead of being a little bit standoffish. Even though we have, certain things set up, we're still being a little bit standoffish to the cannabis industry, because our wait-and-see approach has been invested a little bit too heavily. And I think that we need to start looking at a way that we can make this work, and not just for everybody, being happy, but also for the income and the revenue for the city as well.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, same question.
So I think that some council members did try for a wait-and-see approach. Obviously, with pensions and cuts to police and needing more fire stations and more medics, getting our general fund and getting that revenue in is important. Sacramento seems to wait and see with certain things and not others. I wouldn't say there was much of a wait and see as far as permitting for certain districts and certain neighborhoods. But there is a wait and see for other aspects that community members had come forward to City Council with. For example, there was the cannabis equity for communities that were disproportionately affected by marijuana arrests, families that were broken up. There was a community asking for some sort of reparations, and the city is actually, that's going much slower than these permits are coming out.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on the equity, which I was part of negotiating that. We worked with African American community, the Asian community, the Latino community. They also asked for a study, which was fairly recently completed. This is a legal thing. No one in the state has done this successfully. I think on all of the cannabis, including the core program, which is the equity program, we've been out front. These things take some time. There's a lot of legal T's to cross and I's to dot on this. It has taken a long time, but I think that you will see the RFP coming out within the request for proposals coming out within the next couple of weeks, and we want to do it right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Let me remind the audience that our format does not allow for questions to just one candidate. Okay, all the questions that are submitted need to be asked of all candidates. So thank you. Okay, the next question, and we'll start with Joseph on this one. What is your position on rent stabilization and controls, and would you support exempting mom and pop owners of small multifamily rentals?
I'm for the measure that's being circulated, unquestionably. I think that rent control, uniform rent control is not the answer. I think the market does have to set itself. However, I think that the measure that goes around does well to provide a balance of allowing, rent stabilization or rent regulation, something that will keep the market accessible to Sacramentans. Part of the problem that we're having with homelessness has to do a lot with the way that rents are skyrocketing. It has to do a lot with the unregulated market and the invitation for developers to continue to exacerbate the issue of having outside persons come in, whether it's from the Bay Area or markets they're used to paying higher. We need to make sure that we figure out a way. I think the measure does well to do that. I will be voting yes for that measure. And I think more importantly, the board who can determine those types of exemptions for mom and pops. I think that an ethical board is something that's very important for us Sacramento's to have.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, the same question.
I do support rent stabilization. I'm very interested and intrigued with the idea of exempting mom and pops. I'm a mom and he's a pop. we own a small piece of property. We have tenants. We have been very good landlords. We've kept it affordable. We have done our rent increases very modestly to help with our rising property taxes and costs here in Sacramento, as well as replacing our main water lines and installing solar. I feel like we have been very good example setters, but I also fear for there are people who only own, one house or a small complex, and that's their retirement. Social Security isn't going up the way prices are. And that's really scary for some of the people I talk to in your community, in my community, in Joseph's community, Colonial Heights, Curtis Park. People are worried. What's going to happen to them? They're thinking of moving into their rentals. So it's something that we really need to think about. I'm intrigued by that idea. And thank you for that question.
Okay, and thank you. And Jay.
Thanks. Look, we're a compassionate city. Anyone who is needing to move out because the rent has been jacked up by 50 or 60% or 100% or multiple times in a year, that's just unacceptable. We need to do something about that. I don't think that, and we've had a lot of discussions about this lately, and I wish we had an hour to talk about this because it's such a complicated issue, but I'm not for exempting mom and pops who are owners because I think it's looking at the wrong thing. You could have mom and pops who own very expensive and wealthy people who live there, and so we're going to do rent control for the wealthy. I don't think that's what we should be looking at. What I would be in favor of, and I hope where some of the discussions go, is thinking about a means test for people to do rent control for folks who don't have the money. I don't want to do rent control across the board. I think the initiative is dangerous. Having an elected body with subpoena powers to this and having every developer who wants to redevelop in a poor neighborhood, for example, have to go and justify what they want to do with their buildings. You will not see development in poor neighborhoods, and I think that is not what they're trying to get out of this. We need to look at rent control for those who need it most.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay.
Well, I just want to point out that I think that both of my opponents have not committed to rent regulation and stabilization as much as I have. The fact of the matter is that that we have a gentrification problem, which Jay even just referred to, of developing in poor neighborhoods, which really means jacking moving prices up and moving people out. And to be critical, I'm sorry, I think that she's made the assumption that she will be supportive of the measure that's out. However, I think she hasn't verbally or explicitly committed to saying that is something that she actually endorses.
The question was rent stabilization. It wasn't specific to the measure, Joseph. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and we'll start with Jay. Are there plans for the former Lemon Hill Little League on Martin Luther King Boulevard?
I don't know. I don't deal with it. I think that's District 6, so I'm not sure.
Okay, now, let's
We
ask.
can talk about Airport Little League if you want, where we just did a rededication. They just got
Let's
this.
talk about airport.
I'd love to talk about Airport Little League. Just 60-year anniversary, world champs in 2001, I believe, California champs in 99, also in 98. You have some great people who spent a lot of time on that. We just dedicated one of the fields, and we'll be doing a full revamp, which I believe started 2 days ago of the field. We got some money to do that, and so you will see a new field at Airport Little League. I'm not sure about Lemon Hill.
Okay, but for my own clarification, is this the field on the one side of the executive airport?
Yeah, airport is on
Okay.
both sides of Freeport by Executive Airport.
Okay, all right, so that we all understand that. Okay, so Joseph, can you comment on that as well? Are there plans for the Airport Little League on Martin Luther King Boulevard?
It's on Freeport. 24th, rather, I'm sorry.
Okay, wherever it is, what plans do you have?
Airport Little League, I think, is a model program, and, the plans for that, I think, that they have are very admirable. I would like more just to point out, I know this is not the question, but since we're talking about Little League, I think the Oak Park Little League is one of those things where we're having an issue of who actually owns that title of Oak Park Little League. And I think that the issue of gentrification there in Oak Park especially has caused a great rift amongst that particular program. And I think that that's the one that we should be talking about addressing.
Okay, thank you. And it's your turn, Shanika, but my understanding of Little League is that the city is not really, does not oversee Little League, is that correct? Yeah.
We oversee, correct, the usage of the fields. The Oak Park Little League actually has had an argument between two leagues for 15 years. I will point out that we just got a $1 million grant that will also be coming into that Little League to completely redo that field this fall.
Okay, so it sounds like we're upgrading the fields. And Tamika, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Yes, the Max Mendoza field, it has its brand new structure, I can't think of the word right now, but yes. Airport Little League has been getting some love in their new field. Oak Park Little League field has some new signage as well. There are Little Leagues throughout the district, though, that it's really important that we're making sure we are working with everybody, especially with those neighborhoods, to make sure that there's something for those kids in those communities to do, and make sure that we're supporting it any way that we can as council members.
Okay, good. I think we covered that topic very well. We're all in favor of youth participation in Little League and good fields. Okay, we're going to start with Joseph with this question. Do you have a plan to provide sanitation services for the homeless?
Sanitation services. I mean, the homeless issue is very complex, and of course sanitation services are necessary. A plan that I have for the homeless situation includes sanitation services, definitely. I think that we need to be careful that the Del Rio Trail doesn't turn into a sanitation service for the homeless. The main thing that we have to do is build housing for the homeless, and of course, with housing comes sanitation. And I think that currently, I know the council has talked a lot about fixing the homeless problem and throwing a lot of money at it. Unfortunately, the housing aspect hasn't truly been addressed. As a matter of fact, yesterday the Joshua House program went through, and that was great. I'm very supportive of that. I think it needs to be expanded upon. However, it's sad that the actual investment in building for homeless is a place for them to die, and so this is a situation that needs immediate addressal, and I think that I'm the best candidate to push that issue toward the council.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, the same question.
Yes, so sanitation services, I've thought a lot about it. There are a lot of Mays. We do have a fleet of buses. I don't know how many of you have kids and how many of them actually take the bus to school, but there are very few Sacramento City Unified School buses going out. They're actually sitting in a lot behind the 911 comm center. we could be using those buses and converting them to Lava Bays. Lava Bay has been a very successful mobile sanitation station. And if each district had one, or even starting off, it was shared between two districts. And we were able to convert those sanitation stations and get them moving around, and that would be some solution. I also think for the downtown core, we have lots of vacant buildings. Just like you go to the mall and there's a long hallway and a bathroom at the end, what if we did that in some of those long, narrow, old restaurants that used to exist in the downtown core, so that we could convert those into bathrooms. In Mexico, when we went on our cruise, we were able to use the bathroom that was attended by people who needed the money, and it was donation-based. I think there's lots of solutions, and I've thought about many.
Okay, thank you. And Jay, the same question?
So I think it's a problem, and I think we need to do more than we have about it. We tried something called Pit Stop up in the north area, where we had a station, a bathroom station that we brought in that was personed, I guess you would say, by a few people. It cost us about $175,000 for the year. We are looking at other stations that we can open up, that we can have people at, and hopefully even hire the homeless. It's really a question of resources. That's about $15,000 to hire someone to be at a bathroom. Unfortunately, when we've opened up more bathrooms, it generally takes 2 hours to 1 day to have them clogged up. Your bathroom at Chorley Park near here, someone threw cement down, things like that. So unfortunately, what we found is that if we don't have someone there opening bathrooms on their own, it doesn't last very long. But we do need to do better. It's a health and safety issue for the city.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question, and, oh, sorry.
I just want to point out that both of the candidates talked about sanitation solutions. Again, they don't include housing. I think that housing is the main driver of these sorts of issues. And I think that housing ultimately is what will improve more than anything the sanitation issue.
Okay, thank you for adding that. All right, the next question, and we will start with Tanika. How can you help the city deal with vacant or dilapidated properties?
By holding those owners responsible. And if it's the city, we need to hold ourselves responsible. Part of that is making sure that we are tracking down who owns those vacant and dilapidated properties. I know that there, between code enforcement and justice for neighbors, we have some resources to be able to do that and to get that information. But if somebody is unresponsive, then we need to see where our power is in either absorbing that property or increasing the fines. I would also say that there have been some eminent domain practices done, and it's something that we might look into.
Okay, and Joseph, the same question. I'm so sorry. Jay, same question.
Thanks. So it's a great question. We have about 6,000 vacant lots in the city. 4,000 are owned by individuals or organizations that are private. Last year, I asked for an ordinance to be developed around vacant lots. We passed that through our Law and Legislation Committee about a month ago. It will require landowners to register and post phone numbers or contact information on the lots with a series that will only be $12 a year. And then there will be a series of fines if you're not taking care of your lots. So that's the hammer part of it. I think that's one way we can get some control over it. What I've also asked for, which hopefully will be coming back fairly soon, is a series of incentives that we could put on the vacant lots so we can get them built out. That will help the neighborhood and hopefully help the developer. And what we want to do, what I've asked for, is a series of incentives that start out. If you're going to build market rate housing, you get one level of incentive. If you're going to do affordable housing, you get a second level of incentive. And if you're going to do tiny homes, which we are trying to do, you get a third level of incentive. So we are working on that very hard.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
I think that Jay's experience here shows why he's been the incumbent for a while. Definitely those types of things, imposing penalties for landowners who are not keeping up with their properties, and it allowing incentives again for them to develop those properties in ways that help our community. So, you know, I don't know that vacant lots are something that is, you know, a major problem for our city. However, I do think that it's something that we can address in ways in which Jay said.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with crime, and I'll start with you, Joseph. And the question is, crime has been down in the Southland Park area. To what do you attribute this?
Crime has been down in Southland Park. I would argue because that we have not just a good sense of community here, we have a very diverse community. I think that the problems with homelessness and crime and drug abuse are concentrated on the thoroughfares. And I think that Southland Park, other than Southland Park Drive, which is a very beautiful place, doesn't have a lot of those thoroughfares and a lot of those issues. Unfortunately, we had the issue with the man being arrested in front of 7-Eleven for his car idling, and I think that that's a failure still on our policies towards policing, because that's an instance that could have escalated very quickly for unnecessary reasons. However, those charges were not filed against that person, and I think that Southland Park has done a great job of understanding that there's a lot of different persons within this community, and I think Southland Park was built upon that ordinance of mixed income or you know, mixed housing, where we had an amount of low income and you know, affordable housing built alongside of you know, housing that was market rate.
All right, thank you. And Tanika, same question.
So I don't know why your crime rate has gone down, but I do know that when neighbors look after each other, when neighbors communicate, when neighbors build relationships and break bread together and be true community and keep an eye out for each other, keep an eye out for each other's kids and get back to that village, then yes, crime can go down. I think that the Southland Park community does work at keeping communication with each other, keeping communication with your members and your neighbors. And those are some things that I think all communities can really benefit from to reduce crime, but also it's opportunity. Opportunity is huge for communities. And if kids, you know, don't have a little league field to play on, or don't have after school programs or before school programs, or if people have lost their way and there's nobody to mentor them and help them get back on track, then that does result in higher crimes.
Okay, thank you. And Jay, same question.
Thanks. Crime has actually gone down across the board, across the city, other than homicides, which has really been a gang issue. So it hasn't impacted your neighborhood, thankfully. But I do actually agree with Tanika. I think and it may not seem like crime has gone down. I think that's a function of social media next door. Because everything that happens, if you look the wrong direction, it's on next door and you've done something wrong. So we need to be very careful about that. But I do agree with Tanika that as neighborhoods take ownership, as they do neighborhood watches, as you know your neighbors, that's always going to help because you're looking out for each other, and that's what's important.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question, and I will start with you, Tanika. This is about youth. Many youth in Oak Park have the passion to create change in the community they know and live in. What will you do to uplift youth voices in Oak Park and invite them into community planning?
Well, there is already some work for getting youth into the Parks and Recs. It's now YPSI. Still trying to get them, make that word off the tongue there. So it's Youth Parks and Recs. Rec is now under one big umbrella, and youth are starting to be a part of those the process citywide. I think as a district, it would be great to have a youth council. Maybe folks who are representatives of their schools and working with our school district. We have a mix in Oak Park, a few public schools, lots of charter schools. I know that Way Up already has, principals coming together and some programs that are child-centered, but I think being very intentional and having some sort of youth committee. I know that your neighborhood is also working on getting a youth representative. We did that with the Oak Park Neighborhood Association. And so I think that making sure that they are part of those conversations and being very intentional, making a committee led by them for them.
Okay, thank you. And Jay, same question.
So Way Up is an initiative that I started in Oak Park. I'm really proud of what we've done. We're working with 12 schools that are public charter, and private schools all coming together around issues for their young people. I will tell you, on Saturday morning, I went to a basketball tournament. We raise all the money privately to support Way Up. I went to a basketball tournament with 5 of our elementary schools, 120 kids, and there was nothing better for me to see. We are working with young people. We did have a youth council for about 3 years. My wife, as a volunteer, was running that. When she decided not to volunteer anymore, it went away for a bit. But what's happened is 3 of the districts, Eric Giras, Rick Jennings, and myself, have banded together, and we've hired an individual to get youth council started in each of those districts. So that should come back pretty quickly here. I'd love to talk at length about what we've done citywide. The Department of Youth, Parks and Community Enrichment is something that I pushed for. We've adopted a youth development strategy for the city, and this summer we have nearly 1,000 summer placements for young people. I'm very proud of that.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
A lot of my ideas for the youth are kind of new. I'm an education person. I'm very focused on how to get youth involved in education and excited about academia in general. I think that the achievement gap that's real in our schools is across the nation, but especially here in Sacramento, is something that should be addressed with youth programs, right? And I understand that Jay's done a lot with youth programs, and I know that Tamika is a teacher, so she's very close to the youth. Today I had a young man come to me, and he's struggling. He's about to graduate from high school, and his final projects are building up on him, and he's having the feeling that he can't make it, that he can't do it, and it's overwhelming. And so these things are something that we have to encourage our youth to do. We have to create programs though that are culturally appropriate and that are able to touch youth in a way that get them excited about academia by speaking their language and making sure that they're not being targeted as people that are a problem, that aren't able, and start accepting them and creating programs, like you said, by them and for them.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I'm going to start with Jay, and it pertains to sanctuary cities. Are you in favor of sanctuary cities?
I am in favor of sanctuary cities. I think it's an important thing. It shows who we are as a compassionate city. I do think, and also that was a unanimous vote of our council, a unanimous vote to put $300,000 into a legal network. It's important, again, for us to show who we are as a compassionate city, to take in those. I think there's also a lot of misunderstanding about what that means. And it doesn't mean if someone has committed a felony that they're going to get sanctuary here. What it means is for some of those folks who have been picked up and deported or threatened with deportation, who maybe had a parking ticket 10 years ago or did a misdemeanor 15 years ago, but have been really good citizens of this country, who've been paying their taxes, working, raising their families. Those are the folks that we want to provide sanctuary to. I'm also proud of my own faith congregation. We were the first in Sacramento to be a sanctuary congregation, and I'm very supportive of that.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph, the same question.
I too am very supportive of the sanctuary city status. I think that the movement against immigrants is a fear tactic that's been put in really at the national level. my father being on the Miwok tribe from Oklahoma Hills, Miwok, what we have to understand is that this area is a naturally migrated area for centuries, and growing and crops and making sure that certain things are done for our society is something that's beneficial. I think that any waiver on that, and there are instances where certain persons commit crimes, but that goes with any population. If you have 50,000 persons in any population, there will be some that will commit crimes. I think that using those instances as a reason not to be a sanctuary city is a fear tactic, and I think that I would be very aggressive in making sure that we continue our sanctuary city status.
So yes, I support sanctuary cities. My grandmother came to this country and became a citizen. And I have gone to the new citizens registration. You can see how proud people are to be here, to know that they had, even though it took many, many years for a lot of folks, that they are now citizens. I believe in pathways to citizenship. I believe in keeping our families together. I believe in our sanctuary city status. That's how we became this diverse room of caring people and communities. It's from my grandmother, your grandmother, everybody's comes from somewhere. And I believe that when we provide ways for people to get the resources they need and to become citizens, and know that just because you don't have a green card doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Okay, thank you. There's been a request to, instead of wrap up at 7:45, to go to 8 o'clock. Would that be okay with the candidates? Okay, everybody's okay with that, okay.
Yeah, that's my face. No, they're fine.
Yeah, that's okay? There's been so many interesting questions that request was. Okay, so the next question, and we will start with you, Tamika. What do you think about how the council has handled policing lately? And how would you like to see it handled differently, or wish they had been, let me start this again. What do you think about the council? What do you think about how the council has handled policing lately? And how would you like to see it handled differently, or wish that it had been handled in a different way?
How the council is handling policing. The council doesn't handle policing, the city manager does. So I think that's also important to know. I think that the city council's role, though, is to make sure that the city manager has some goals in place to make sure that communities are connecting with their law enforcement agencies and their public safety departments. And so I think also part of our role as council members is to acknowledge that there's a problem, because there is. Like Joseph had mentioned, there was a gentleman at the 7-Eleven who was policed very differently than a gentleman in my neighborhood yesterday, who was caught with a knife, who had just robbed the store and was smashing my neighbor's windows and slashing their tires. We have a problem. 2 situations, 2 different people, handled very differently.
Okay, thank you. And Jay, same question.
Could you repeat it? I just want to hear you say that again.
This is why we have question sorters. Sometimes I can't read everybody's handwriting, but we will give it a shot. What do you think about how the council has handled policing lately, and how would you like to see it handled differently, or wish it had been handled in a better way?
So, where the council is today, and Tamika's right, we do not hire the police chief. The city manager does, but we do hire the city manager, so there is a line of accountability that comes back to us. And a lot of that depends on the relationship and the partnership between the city manager and the mayor and the council. We have a much different relationship now than with our prior city manager and our prior mayor. It's much more of a partnership. And in hiring this police chief, we made very, very clear to the city manager, and he accepted it completely, that where we wanted to move was back towards community-oriented policing. That's not something that our former police chief really believed in, and I think we paid the price of that over time, plus the recession and losing a lot of officers. We have a lot of confidence in the police chief and Daniel Hahn, who's homegrown in Oak Park. We are working with him on what we should do with policies, practices, procedures, and training so we can prevent things like the death of Stefan Clark from happening again. We're also working with the Attorney General. We just met with him this week, who's helping us on those procedures as well.
Okay, Joseph, same question.
Well, I'm glad I was asked on this question. Because what you're hearing here is, again, a lot of rhetoric that doesn't involve action. You know, I understand the council's role is limited, and as an individual council member, it's your job to argue for the council or persuade the council for policies that will, you know, affect the way the policing is done. So right now, though, we're at risk. Like our city can, like that situation at 7-Eleven could have turned very much different. And our city is at risk from all this building and all this growth we've done and being a destination city to turn it into a city that's known for, you know, racist police and rioting and looting. And we don't want that. You know, community policing is a word that's very fashionable and it's thrown around a lot. But, you know, I have a definite outline of a plan for community policing that involves either investing in what Hans said. He has a program it's called, you know, Walk in My Shoes or something, which is great. We need to immediately start doing that. Furthermore, I think it's important that we start thinking about ways to have the community involved in the policing process, whether that's hiring people from the community to do patrol and, you know, property crimes. But I definitely think that community policing shouldn't just be a fashionable word, and there should be a definite plan enacted immediately. And no, I'm not happy with the council's current approach to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question, and I will start with Jay, has to do with schools. What is your stance on charter versus traditional public schools?
So obviously not a question that the council deals with on an ongoing basis. But what I will say is it's a matter of parental choice. I wish we had no need for charter schools, and that would mean that every public school was excellent in every neighborhood. But when you go to neighborhoods and you see schools that are not working well, and parents who may not be able to afford transportation to another neighborhood and really have no choice, I think it's not right to say you have no choice but to send your kid to a school that's simply not working. This school actually is a dependent charter school, and it's worked well in combination with the teachers union. I will tell you, and I do this for a living, I'm a consultant, I do education work. The best schools I've seen were charter schools in Los Angeles, green dot schools that are also part of the California Teachers Association. So I think that there's a third way where people can work together. We're far too polarized in how we do it, and that's because we look at it from the view of adults rather than the children.
Thank you. Joseph, the same question.
Yeah, for me, this is a very interesting topic as well. I went just the other day to watch Alice Huffman speak, the California president of the NAACP, exactly on this question. And focused on a lot of the work that I do at Sac State is on this question. And Jay made some very good points. Charter schools initially were meant to support the public school system, and they were meant to be like an enrichment type of thing. Unfortunately, profiteering and you know, people trying to you know, make money off of education and public dollars has caused that polarizing effect where it's a competition and they want to take students and say they're better. And unfortunately, it affects the public school system. I'm a firm supporter of public schools and the public school system. However, the charter school system has a place, and I think tying them in with the teachers' unions or making sure that they're in a supportive role rather than a competitive role ultimately helps the students. And I think that we need to move in that direction in any way that we can.
Okay, thank you. And Tamika, same question.
So yes, thank you, Jay, for making the distinction, because there are dependent charters, independent charters, and public. in traditional, excuse me. All public schools, all tuition free. I do believe that our traditional schools do need some help, and I want to make sure that our leaders at the state level are not pulling resources from those traditional schools, but really making sure that those resources, those schools get even more. I think that teachers should have an option to unionize. St. Hope, Sakai, for example, I was working with Kingsley, who was an AP government teacher there at Sacramento High School, who went to SCTA to unionize. Most of their teachers agreed, the parents agreed, the students agreed. There's still in negotiations to work this out. There are ways to make sure that we're putting in protections for teachers and for those students and protecting our traditional schools. But I do believe in school choice.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and I will start with you, Joseph. This has to do with fairness. How can you make sure you're addressing all District 5 neighborhoods equally?
I was just talking on my way up here because I live right around the corner. This is the neighborhood that I've made my home since the late 90s, this particular neighborhood. I think that because of that, I think that Freeport Manor really represents a true representation of the district, in that you have homes and members of the community that are very affluent, and right down the street or 3 doors down, you have one of those homes that are they're vacant and not upkept, and you have the whole gamut. I think that being around that type of diversity for so long not just helps me to be able to understand the different problems of the neighborhoods, but I've been tied to this community since 1989. I went to Sac High. Kevin Johnson was still playing basketball for the Suns. Like I said, I was homeless growing up here, and when I graduated here from when it was Thurgood Marshall, I was sleeping on couches and in park benches. I graduated early, and this was a continuation school at that time, so I was able to accelerate my credits. The point that I'm making is that I'm very tied to this community, from Southland Park all the way to Oak Park, all the way to the Stockton corridor, which was the place where I lived for a while. So those experiences and those ties and those friendships that I've made over the years make me very adept to understanding the issues of each community.
Thank you. Tamika.
So I think that's something where being a teacher comes in really handy, because you do have to be fair, you have to be impartial, you have to build an entire environment with a lot of different little personalities and make it work and foster everyone, and make sure that everyone feels special, that they have your respect, and that they're treated with dignity. And I will continue to do that, not just with our little people, but with our communities, our neighborhoods as well. It's something that I value. I've been very good at it, actually. I've had a classroom that's been modeled for that fairness, for that inclusion, for really helping children and their parents work together. It's about building collaborations. It's about listening to everyone. And it's about making sure that everybody has access to your council member, access to their staff, and open lines of communication so that nobody feels left behind.
Thank you. And Jay, same question.
I'm not sure that you can always treat everyone equally. I would rather look at situations around equity. And as I said before, there are probably 20 neighborhoods in this district, and they're very, very diverse. I think the most diverse set of neighborhoods. If you think of everything from Southland Park to South Oak Park, the needs of every neighborhood are quite different. What we have tried to do, what I've tried to do over the last 7.5 years, is really meet the different needs of the neighborhood to support the neighborhoods and what they want and what they desire. As I said before, what we do every year is we bring all the neighborhood leaders together and we ask them what their needs are. I'm not telling them what they are. And say, what are your 2 top priorities and how can we help you? So here, as you know, the shopping center on Southland Park and 35th has been an eyesore for years. We're really excited that we finally have a market coming in, and we hope to really help redo the entire shopping center. The shopping center at Florin, where you're getting new buildings and a remodel Bel Air, is going to be fabulous. That took a lot of effort and time, and obviously the Del Rio Trail as well for your neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. The next question, let's see, has to do with access to open space. Tamika, I will start with you. Access to open space and free recreation opportunities is very important. Schoolyards are a good part of answering this need. Alice Burney just closed. What would you do to advocate for community access to Alice Burney?
Well, I think first we need to find out why it closed, why the access to Alice Burney was closed. I know from my kids' school, we had, just after the November election in 2016, we had some graffiti on our ball wall. Our campus is open to the neighborhood and open to the public, and I think that if a school that has a really good relationship for the community suddenly closes off to that community, there's a reason, and I think that bringing everyone together, the school, the community members, the CAF team, the administrators, as well as the school district, to come out and figure out what we can do to make sure that whatever the reason, we are working together to make sure that doesn't happen. I know that a lot of families use the fields at Alice Burney to play with their dogs. Kids go out there and kick the soccer ball. It's lovely to be open to the community. Schools are in communities because they're part of communities.
Thank you, and Jay, same question.
Fundamentally, these are all public buildings and they should always be open. I mean, that's the bottom line, but unfortunately, they're not. The problem at Alice Burney was one of vandalism and people bringing their dogs in and not cleaning up after them. We did exactly what Tanika suggested we should do, so thank you very much. We brought everyone together. So we brought people from the school district. We met with the principal. We met with representatives or a representative of Slipna. I think we have a partial answer, and hopefully incrementally we can get better to open the school up. There's a lot of schools, and I visit certainly all the schools in my district, but visit other schools as well. Most have fences around them when they're not here, unfortunately. It's kind of the society we live in, and the vandalism problem at Burney was great enough that they did put a gate up and they did lock down the campus. I don't think it's the long-term solution. We want to open it up, and we want to work with both the community and with the school to make sure that everyone is safe and that the campus is well protected, so kids who are there during the weekend and on the weekends are safe and can use the facility as well as the neighborhood.
Thank you, and Joseph, same question.
Alice Burney is probably closed. This is the second or third time that I've seen Alice Burney closed. I see it as an opportunity, and we talked earlier about, the difference between public schools and charter schools, and I would argue that part of the reason that Alice Burney closed is because of lack of funding, because charter schools taking that away. However, if we can find a way, like Jay said, to bring people together from those communities, whether it's charter schools, public schools, I think the access to the schools should be, most importantly, for it to be a school, a place of learning. I think that Alice Burney has always had a solid education program when it is open, and I think it's an opportunity for us to build that and to make that into something that would flourish for our children. Ultimately, like Jay says, it's public property, but instead of turning it into a dog park, I think definitely we need to explore options for bringing education together and making our kids more, educated and have that chance and opportunity to go there.
Okay, thank you. And we have an additional comment?
Yes, just to add, community members can be the greatest safety net, and having more people keeping an eye on places like our schools where our kids go or our parks is what we should be promoting. We did a TED study at McClatchy Park to see where some of those barriers were, because we were having so many problems with blight and with vandalism, with things being broken or graffitied on, taken out, and camping. And so I think that it has to be a collaboration, and I think the more eyes that can keep out and be really committing as a neighborhood to say, we're gonna take ownership and we're gonna keep our eye out, because this is not just the school district's school, this is everybody's school.
Thank you. Well, we have gotten through 18 questions on a variety of issues. Thank you to all of you. It's time now for the closing statement from each candidate. The closing statement will be 2 minutes. And Jay, we'll start with you.
So, again, I want to thank the league, and I want to thank Slipknot, not only for putting this on tonight, but for all the work you do representing your neighborhood. I don't think people understand how much time and effort it takes to volunteer, and I want one of the polo shirts that we have the tees that you guys have. I also want to thank both Joseph and Tamika. I said this on a debate we had on Saturday. I really mean it, is that putting yourself out there, running for public office, it takes its toll. It's a long campaign. It's difficult on your family. It's difficult on yourself. So I just want to commend both of them. I think this is important. What I'd love people to look at, I'm happy to run on my record. I've been your council person for 7.5 years. I have worked hard with your neighborhood and with neighborhoods across the city. My plan is to continue to do that. I would love for people to look again at my record, at the tangible things that I've delivered by request and for the city. I've been involved in a lot of city issues. I chaired RT for Regional Transit for 2 years and helped that organization turn around. I'm the current chair of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I'm the current chair of the Library Authority, where we just put an extra $1 million in to increase hours for the library. Those are the things that are really important, I think, to improving the quality of life in the city in which we live. And for me, I look forward to working with each and every one of you to continue that, to make this Sacramento the city we want it to be. For me, the metric has always been, is this a city where my own children want to come back and live? And I think we're getting there, and that does include a vibrant downtown. It includes great neighborhoods where people feel safe in their homes and their communities, and it involves the amenities that we all want and desire for our city. So I look forward to doing that. I look forward to doing that with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Tamika. I'm sorry, it is Joseph.
Ultimately, this political campaign and running for office is a marketplace for ideas. And what you're choosing when you're voting is whose ideas are best, or whose record may be best, or who you feel will represent not just your community, but your district as a whole, the best. And I know that we can't argue with Jay's experience. He's definitely qualified in that area. He's been there. He's worked hard. He's done a lot of things. And when I'm critical of him, I don't want it to sound like that I don't appreciate the work that he's done to grow our city. However, I do feel that it's time for a change. I do feel that the growth that he's made is, we're on the next step of that. We're starting to be a big city now. We need to deal with big city problems. I feel that Jay's track record also works against him. I think that not just it's a good thing to show what he's done as far as growth, it also works against him in that we're having a lot of issues. Murder rates are up, gang problems are up. There's no doubt that homelessness and drugs are infiltrating our neighborhoods, especially our thoroughfares. We've had police killing people, and Stephon Clark was not the first instance. This has been something that's been going on. I think that it's time for a change. I think that I'm the best candidate for that change. I think that I will be able to, use my rhetorical skills to influence the council better than any other candidate. However, if we continue on this path, I'm afraid that if our city looks like this now in a time of progress, we're on an uptick, if you will. How will our city look if we do have a downturn, if the economy crashes? We're going to have problems that are unfathomable. And I think that it's time to have someone get in there and address these social issues in a way that is articulate, intelligent, and also very influential. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And Tamika, your closing statement?
Right, well, thank you so much. Thank you again, Nancy and the League of Women Voters for having us. It has been quite an adventure. I'm not here to run against Jay or to unseat him or to put him or anyone out of a job. I'm running to represent communities. I'm running to represent our neighborhoods, again, our family, our neighbors, our kids. You know, there are some appointments you get when you're a city council member. You can't just walk in and say, I want to sit on this board. You have to be appointed. Or you have to be appointed by a council member or be a council member. So I really look forward to serving on the RT board and serving on the library authority and being able to bring some more gender and racial equity to our Sacramento city. But I also look forward to seeing how we can grow with a new voice, with a new perspective. Yes, I am a mom. I do have a family. I work very hard. I have run a neighborhood association. I have gone to many leadership trainings and institutes, and I really feel that I am ready for this responsibility. And I have been fighting for communities for over 20 years. I will continue to fight. And I hope that I can do it as your next city council representative, because I believe that we will work very well together, because I value your community. I value all of our District 5 communities, as well as the city of Sacramento, my home, where I was born and raised. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. We'll see if this mic works for a bit. I want to thank all the candidates for being here this evening and for responding to the questions from the neighborhood folks. And thank you all for being here. I just have to I want to comment on Voters' Choice, which is something that Sacramento County is involved in this year. There are 5 counties in the state that were selected for this pilot program called Voters' Choice, in which everyone has been mailed a ballot. You've all received a ballot, correct? Okay. Now, not everyone. There's 35% of our county that has not ever voted by mail, so this is maybe going to be something new for them. But you have some options. Maybe you've already voted. Has everybody? A few. Okay, some hands are going. Okay. All right. So there's 3 things you can do. You can fill out your ballot and you can mail it. Drop it in the mail. Or you can take it to a vote center. And the pamphlet that came with your ballot describes where those vote centers are. Some of them are open 4 days prior to Election Day, and some are actually open 11 days prior. There are also drop boxes around the city, and check on your voter registration pamphlet for that as well. So the reason we're doing this is in other areas, and I'm thinking in the state of Colorado, where this has been tried, it has increased the rate of voting tremendously. So that's what we're trying to do, is have as many people vote as possible. Thank you for being informed citizens. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for participating in our democracy. Good night.